But you can't put lithium hydroxide on mice. It dissolves them, which is not a good thing to do. So my mother tore down the kitchen curtains, made little pockets. My father stuffed them full of lithium hydroxide. We put it around there. The first kitchen curtains in space were those from Converse, Texas. And it worked wonderfully. The mice are in their 67th generation, still alive at Southwest Research. Today, they're doing fine. They're normal. They didn't know. Ladies and gentlemen, they had no idea what happened when you went above 29,000 feet, Everest. This was 700 miles. What's up there? The radiation, Van Allen belt. It'll kill you. It didn't. Whew. There's other things that'll kill you. Taxes. God. So, you live here in Converse, and things are happening all the time. Everything that's ever been invented has been invented, said the director of the patent office in 1893. It hasn't. What's the last great big thing that's been invented? The computer. My grandkids say, "Opie, can I play on the computer?" Play is the operant word. They're not going to work on it. They're going to eat. Terrible. Yeah. But the computer's an amazing critter. What I think is funny is that when they had the Palm Pilots that first came out, I ran home to my wife and said, "Looky, looky, looky. You can write on it, and it'll remember it." My wife got a piece of paper, and she wrote on it. And she says, "Yep, got it." This piece of paper was free. This pencil was free. How much is that piece of junk you got there? At the time, there was $700. So I didn't get one, and she was right. But that's technology. That's advancements. I give you a problem. 3 mice into space. One day, you gotta keep them alive 5 more days, just in case you don't find them. Mice, like junior high people, eat food. How are you going to feed them? Put mouse pellets back there? You tell a mouse, "Don't eat it all." Have you ever told a kid, "Don't eat all the chocolate"? No. I've not tried it with our grandkids. You may as well waste your breath. So how are you going to feed mice up there? And mice will overeat. And what you need up there in space is a little bitty capsule full of mouse barf. You. Now what? Don't overfeed them. The device to feed them. I have one here. No clockwork. It moves a food tray. Here's the opening. It moves a food tray up ahead once every 12 hours. No clockwork, no electricity. Because that was the government's rules. Just in case the electricity fails, the mice still have to be fed. Do you know what it's like if the electricity fails at McDonald's? The kid can't make change. The kid can't even open the cash register. And you certainly can't order your egg burger. It's pathetic. Well, this thing wasn't allowed to use electricity. This is an invention that was thought of, designed, and built by people in Converse. My father designed it. Oscar Langner built it. We tested it. It worked. What makes it go? The same thing that Nautilus uses now. And what drives it? A piston driven by a stuff called silly putty, the toy. When you squeeze silly putty, it resists it. When you don't squeeze it, it squeezes uniformly. So this piston goes out uniformly and releases the Nautilus and feeds the mouse. Now to get back to the mouse food, and the food that my brother and I had to eat, the tasteless stuff. It was, my mother put it in little butter tubs with little lids. I was in high school. I was so proud. 300 grams of the stuff. There was a problem. We had to measure every gram that went in and every gram that went out. I learned not to go to the bathroom in school. Well, 300 grams at lunch. I went to the lunchroom. I took the cover off. And my very best friend looked at this and said, "Oh, God, that looks like barf!" It did. I wasn't sure I wanted to eat it, but it was an experiment. I had a wonderful chemistry teacher who allowed me to eat in the chemistry lab so I wouldn't have to be faced with my friends who wanted to make fun of my food. And we ate 300 grams for breakfast, 300 grams for lunch, and 300 grams for supper. We were weighed very carefully, went through a full physical exam at the beginning. We lasted 2 weeks. Whose fault was it that we stopped the experiment? Yep, mine. Because I was in the band. And the band was going to go to Buccaneer Days in Galveston. And I wasn't going to take baby barf to Buccaneer Days in Galveston. So we ended the experiment. We could have gone on. Is taste important? Yes. Very funny. My brother, my father, and I, all three of us were on the experiment. That's all we ate. The only thing else we drank was water. We didn't lose any weight. But we started, after the first week, we started getting recurrent dreams. My father dreamed about a bathtub full of milk in which he immersed himself and drank it all. My brother dreamed he was on a belt at the Buttercrust Bakery and just fill her up. And I dreamed that I was at a pudding factory and just ate and exploded. I enjoyed every bit of the explosion. It was wonderful. And these dreams recurred. The only other thing that I can tell you about that experiment, except that it was very successful, the closer we got to mealtime, the less hungry we got. When it was mealtime, we felt like we had just eaten a full meal. We had to choke that stuff down and weren't allowed to throw up. And it was very difficult. Right after mealtime, we were hungry. Have you ever experienced that? If you remember back, way back to your childhood, some of you are going to have a hard time. Right after supper comes a thing called dessert. Not always, but sometimes. You're hungry for dessert. You don't want any more of the peas, thank you very much. Or broccoli, or whatever it is. So you know what it feels like to be full and not be full. That was the problem we had. And my father came to the conclusion that yes, taste is important. Can you imagine in the Apollo or the Gemini or the Mercury in orbit around Earth? Hello, Houston. This is the pilot. Yeah, go ahead. I I ain't eating this expletive deleted. You got to, it's the only thing you got up there. I ain't eating it. What are you going to do? The guy is 150 miles up there. You can't do like my father did with the monkeys. They had a little wire in their seats. And if the monkeys didn't take the picture, they pushed a little button, gave a little shock. You can't do that to astronauts. It's not nice. So what are you going to do if the astronaut says, I'm not eating this baby barf? Not gonna do it. You're stuck. So it was vitally important that the food tasted good, smelled good. At first it didn't look good. At first it was in tubes. Because if you let liquids loose, they make tiny little bubbles. I'll tell you, because you're fellow Converse, I'll tell you a secret that nobody else, there are only 2 people that know this. My father did experiments in weightlessness. Airplane up, parabola, 30 seconds. Now they can do 60 seconds of weightlessness. My father wanted to know what would happen to a flame in weightlessness. So he asked the flight director, can I do this? The flight director used several expletives, which are here deleted. Not on your life. Keep your hands in your pockets. Well, in my father's pocket was a butane lighter. Yeah, he did it. When the pilot wasn't looking. Little balls of flame shot out and floated everywhere. My father was more scared than the pilot who didn't even see it. So now we know, don't take your butane lighter on a weightlessness flight. It's not a good thing to do. But now we know what flames do in weightlessness. I would love to tell you hours and hours of wonderful stories that they tell, which they learned in the Apollo, and which they're still doing in the space station today. Stuff that they learned. For instance, you put 2 metals together. They weld each other shut in weightlessness. You have to be careful of the metal you use. This is aircraft aluminum. Only that doesn't weld shut. And all of these things, and the things I'm telling you, all came from a town called Converse. Converse, Texas. When people ask, where's Converse? It's near San Antonio. Everybody knows where San Antonio is. I live for the dream that someday, when you say Converse, people know where Converse is. Because this is where ideas come from. This is where education comes from. The Judson school system, not only is it good in football, God help us, it's good in other things too. It's a good school system. It's a good school. And you've got some great leaders. You really, really do. And they're trying very hard to bring you into the 21st century. With business, with education, with recreation. You've got to enjoy growing large. Not just, but growing large. I want to share with you a poem, my very favorite poem, British author R.L. Sharp. And I don't share it with everybody, because it's kind of a pet of mine. I heard it first from Dr. Damon Cooley, the famous heart surgeon. He came to Incarnate Word, and he held a lecture there. And he read this poem. It was given to him by the creator of the South African area. At that time, it was only an area. And it impressed me so much that after the speech, I went up and wanted to ask him for a copy of the poem, because it was really impressive to me. It really touched my heart if I had a heart. Keep ice pumps set up. And I stood in line waiting to talk to all the other people and the president of the university. They all, and I wanted to talk to him, and I was in line, and he had to leave to catch a plane. And he wanted to talk to him. And my wife was with me. And I said, I really want that poem. She said, that's all you want? My wife, God bless her, left the line, went to Mrs. Cooley, and said, Mrs. Cooley, my husband wants a copy of that poem your husband said. Can you get that for me? Mrs. Cooley said, no problem, honey. She went to the front of the line. Denton, give me a copy of that poem. Denton reached in his billfold, gave her the original from the letter from the governor of the Pretoria. Said, here, I can give you another. The wife gave it to my wife. My wife gave it to me. Wives are invaluable. If you don't have one, get one. They're awfully nice. And if you're a wife, I don't know what husbands are good for. Two things, and I can't mention either of them. Sometimes we're not even good for them. So, wives, thank you so much for being wives. Conversions, thank you so much for living in Converse and believing in Converse and supporting Converse. It's very, very important. You're a diamond in the rough. Become a real diamond. Isn't it strange that princes and kings and clowns and caper and sawdust rings and common people like you and me are builders for eternity? Each is given a shapeless mass, a book of rules, and a bag of tools. And each must make, ere life is flown, a stumbling block or a stepping stone. Thank you.
Preserve the history of Converse, and you have my word that I will, as long as I'm married in Converse. And we are working on in the museum, trying to get a building made. So one day we can drive to your home and pick up that capsule. And I also have a presentation for you too.